Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. And in this video, I want to look at the conjunction of Chiron and Saturn. Now, this is a pretty rare conjunction because if you know anything about Chiron, you'll know that it travels pretty close to the orbit of Saturn, in fact, between Saturn and Uranus. So the conjunctions are few and far between. And in fact, some of them are so obscure that there are no real celebrities to sort of give examples of, and they won't happen anytime soon. So I'm going to skip over some of the signs. In fact, we're just going to do a few of the signs. The last conjunction we had was in Pisces. That was in the 60s. And the next one we'll have is, I believe it's in Taurus. And that's not till, I'm not sure the exact date, but it's not anything we have to worry about right now. It's not until Saturn goes into Taurus. Yeah, so anyway, so it's, I don't know, 2030, I don't know. It's a ways away, a decade away or something. So anyway, what is Chiron and what is Saturn? Well, Chiron, as you probably know by now, is an odd little minor planet that has characteristics of a comma and an asteroid as well. It travels in between the orbit of Saturn and Uranus. It's closer to the orbit of Saturn when it's in Libra, and closer to the orbit of Uranus when it's in Aries, right? And so it has characteristics of both. It has a tail of a comma, a comet, a coma, it's called. So it has a, but it's not a comet, and it's not quite an asteroid, although it's partially an asteroid and partially a minor planet. It even has rings. So you can see that it's very unusual, defies all stereotypes, and really just is in a class of its own. Mythologically, it's equally as unique. Chiron is a centaur, but he's has a human body with basically a horse's, the horse growing out of his rear. So he looks different from the other centaurs. He's also much more spiritually evolved. He was a teacher, a philosopher, but he was rejected by his mother for being so different, so unique. And then he was shot in the ankle by a poison arrow that he himself made the poison for Hercules, who because he was aiding Hercules upon his request. But Chiron is a philosopher, a teacher, a spiritual guy, knows all about medicinal herbs, knows all about, I think he was even an astrologer, basically a shaman, like a very, like a priest-like character, highly evolved, and a healer. And then, so what is Saturn? Well, Saturn is Chronos, Saturn is time, Saturn is authority and the law, the rule of the law, the discipline, the structure, the government, the higher up. It's sort of like the glass ceiling of all of society. There's really Saturn is the last planet you have to answer to, at least in the earthly realm. Then we can go beyond it with Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and all the other minor planets out there. But and Chiron kind of transcends that. Chiron does go beyond this earthly realm into the realm of Uranus. But as far as earthly rule, Saturn is the limit, right? And Saturn often rules restrictions and limitations, and wants you to be mature, wants you to work hard, denies things until you're ready to receive it, but then it endures, right? Saturn will make things long, and Saturn will make things crystallized and refined and very solid, right? So yeah, it can be very scientific or just kind of hard and well developed and mature and authoritarian. Saturnian type people are often leaders and rulers and controllers. But yeah, so Chiron plus Saturn will combine these two aspects into somebody who's a leader and a ruler, but in a more chironic way. They could be very different, very creative, or their leadership could be very unique. They could just be a very standout leader, a very different kind of leader, or they could be a healer, right? Healer, teacher, anything like that. Any of those chironic themes apply to a Saturnian type of authority, right? This is a very well developed Chiron, you could say, a very mature Chiron. So let's look at examples. We're not going to get to every single sign, but we'll start and see where it goes. So we're going to start with Aries, as always, and you can see by the date, pretty slim pickings back then. I mean, the further back you go, the less celebrities you have to choose from. And I always like using celebrities because we can look at their life and know pretty much most of the important things about them. Maybe not everything. Florence Nightingale, she is somebody who's not very well known, but she was a nurse and she revolutionized nursing, and she helped a lot of people in Turkey during the Crimean War, where Russia was fighting for Crimea. You see, Crimea has a long history of being a part of Russia. That's not a new thing. In any case, so she has Saturn, Chiron, North Node in Mercury and Aries in the 7th house. So we know that she's going to be dealing with others in relationship, and then Chiron is playing a very healing role here, a mature healing role, especially conjunct Saturn. But Saturn is in poor dignity, and when a planet is in the 7th house in poor dignity, relating to that planet, they're going to work with others who are in poor dignity. She's healing people. So often you'll see this for like healers, for people who deal with people who need help, other people who need help. 7th house planets especially will do that, but it could be 6th or 8th in poor dignity, where they're helping others. This could be opposite too, where they're hurting other people, and dealing with criminal elements, right? But here she's being very chironic, mature, and she's taking on this healer role, right? Wounded healer. This is very chironic for somebody like Florence Nightingale. Yeah. So she also has her North Node here, so it's kind of like an obsession and transforming all that. Jupiter's in good dignity, Sun and Moon and Taurus in the 9th, philosophical. Venus in Cancer, again, that moon kind of caring quality. So that's basically it. Also Aries for being the trailblazer that it is, groundbreaking, just doing things first, being first in line. Also what's interesting is that we're getting this Uranus and Neptune square the nodes, and in the 4th house, so that deals with accidents and disease, and in land, on the land, home, right? So interesting that that's playing in there. She's definitely helping with accidents and disease. Uranus being accidents, Neptune being disease. Neptune relates to disease because it's hidden. It's something we don't see, right? And Uranus accidents because it's very shocking. So who else has it in Aries? Probably nobody you've ever heard of, but Lola Montez is a dancer. Charles Negre is a photographer. And Herbert Spencer, he's a philosopher. So yeah, we get a lot of artists and also like high-minded people with the Chiron Saturn conjunction. Let's move on to Taurus. And we're going to go to probably one of the greatest philosopher, poet, spiritualist, Sufi type mystics ever. Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. I've read that. It's one of the best books ever. Is the 3rd most translated book of all time. Just to put that in perspective, the 3rd most translated book of all time, behind the Bible, number 1, Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, number 2, Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. And if you've never read it, go out and read it. Get it. It's a fantastic book. All right. So Khalil Gibran. you know, he is a prophet. Like, he's an enlightened being. I mean, no doubt about it. All right, so he's got a, and this, by the way, this is a double D rated chart, so it is conflicting, unverified, but it does seem to make sense. And again, it's slim picking, so I went with it. Loaded 6th house in Taurus. And then we see the mirroring of that with the 2nd house, although it's Capricorn. And then it's basically, we're getting a grand Earth trine. It's a little wide here with Uranus, but still, it's picking it up. And I mean, when you're getting two influences, then you really have to pay attention. So 2nd house and Taurus. So there's something very beautiful and sensual and artistic. Actually, he's also a very, very nice artist as well. He does these amazing drawing portraits. Highly spiritual type person and very gentle as well. And he's got Venus and Venus conjunct Moon on the ascendant in Sagittarius. So that comes through quite well. So we get the Saturn, Chiron. So Taurus 6th house, you know, for hard work, writing also will definitely translate to 6th house, because it's something, it can be like 6th house can be very academic. It's something that you're going to do on a regular basis and work hard at. But again, this is a double D rated chart, so it's not don't take it too literally, I guess. Take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, MC conjunct Uranus and Virgo, so we're seeing again that Virgo, and then Jupiter and Gemini, right? Jupiter is the ascendant lord in Gemini. Not great for you know, spiritual type awareness, Jupiter and Gemini, but however, he was extremely involved. So you can't just say if somebody has Jupiter and Gemini or Virgo or even Capricorn that they're not going to be spiritually aware or involved. It's certainly possible. It's just showing us potential challenge related to that. But Jupiter in whatever sign will be good at the things relating to that sign. So Jupiter and Gemini will definitely help with writing a lot. But if we just look here, okay, nothing, a lot of retrogrades, right? Okay. Definitely somebody who is going against the grain. But South Node is very conjunct Saturn. Saturn is ruling the 2nd and 3rd house, so that definitely translates to writing as well. And Saturn will write a long time. Like, it will make Saturn related to writing can write novels as opposed to like short little poems and whatnot. But Chiron is helping him be very creative, very out of the box, very different. And I haven't read that much I've only read The Prophet, but it does have this Chironic feel because it's just so unique, so different. And you have to read it to understand it. It's very philosophical and poetic, incredibly beautiful, but a novel at the same time. Novelist, I mean, it's not really a novel, but it's kind of it's drawn out, and that's the Saturnian influence, right? So any case, and Neptune also, South Node Neptune, Taurus, and beautiful, that's the Taurian influence as well. And then Venus on the ascendant, conjunct Moon. All right, so that's Khalil Gibran. We won't take too long with any of these. Igor Stravinsky, also with this combination, I think Stravinsky, he played violin. Anyway, Vincenzo Lancia, car designer, John Adams, Alexander Fleming, who invented penicillin, Bela Lugosi, the actor, and George Braque, who is a fellow Cubist painter, along with Pablo Picasso. One more thing, North Node in the 12th in Scorpio, that's very deep and spiritual and mystical. So in any case. And then Mars in Capricorn. Mars is exalted, conjunct the sun. So very action-oriented guy. Anyways, let's go to Gemini. And we're going to go to another great author, very different, but Franz Kafka. I must have spelled it wrong. Oh, I didn't save it. Hold on. Yeah, that looks right. All right. Franz Kafka wrote The Metamorphosis, where this man, he wrote many things. He was a great author. This man turns into a cockroach, right? And I mean, how excellent is that for Saturn and Chiron conjunct in the 11th house in Gemini, right? Along with Mercury, Venus, and Moon, right? Gemini, writing, of course. And then Chiron for, he's not just a little story writer. He writes books. He writes these novels. So Chiron, that metamorphosis, with Saturn. And so Venus ruling the 3rd house, conjunct Gemini, Mercury in Gemini. So he's a writer through and through. 11th house, career success, very strong career, right? Also North Node in Scorpio, the transmutation, and then of course Pluto in Gemini, conjunct Chiron. So definitely he's thinking about metamorphosis, things of that nature, changing into bugs, just being very, very strange, weird. He also wrote, there was another book or short story, I think, about a guy who starves himself to death. And he fasted for money, and then he dies, and that's very Plutonic. Thinking about death, and also Saturn, because Saturn restriction, and Chiron just being very unique and strange. So yeah, square to Uranus in the 2nd, so he likes to be shocking. He likes to be extremely different, shocking, rebellious in his literary works, and that comes through quite well. So yeah, Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter is exalted, conjunct the sun. It's expanding the ego, especially in the 12th house, very creative. So all very relevant. Chiron being the influence to just be totally weird and outside the box. Who else has it in Gemini? Coco Chanel, famous designer. Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator. Harry Truman, president. Rumi. So what's crazy is that we're getting 2 Sufi mystic poets with one conjunction. Rumi has in Gemini, and born way before Khalil Gibran. But Khalil Gibran's another. He's a Sufi. He's born in Middle East, in Lebanon. They're both Sufi mystic, basically. Napoleon Hill is the other Gemini. All right. And then Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio have virtually nobody of note. A few like minor figures here and there, leaders of countries, but leaders of like princes and whatnot, royalty and all that, they're just born into it. You don't have to have any great, significance in your chart, although you probably see it still, but it's just kind of boring. This count, that whoever, this duke, whatever. I don't know. Religious figures. Anyway, let's go to Sagittarius. Try not to make these too long. We're going to go to Rene Magritte. And maybe you've never heard of Rene Magritte. Oh, man. Let me say that. Oh, it is. It's not. Okay. All right. Rene Magritte is a surrealist painter. Very unique. I want to pull up. some of Rene Magritte's work, just so you understand exactly what we're talking about. He does all these very stiff portraits that are very realistic, surrealistic, we call it. You know, when it's very realistic, but like imaginary at the same time, surrealistic. I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about. So Dali-esque, right? You get it. And he's just weird, right? And it's always these portraits, often, and they're just very odd and funny, humorous. But let's look at his chart. Okay, so he's got Sun in Scorpio in the 29th, but very close to the ascendant. Then Chiron, Uranus, and Saturn. So this is even more of a Chiron-Uranus conjunction, but at the same time, it's a slim picking, so I had to go with it. Loaded first house. And so one of the things that you'll notice is that he's always doing portraits. And that is a very first house kind of motif, if you will. It could be seventh house as well, others. But when somebody's energy is all very, very focused in the first house, they're very concerned with the face and the body, and even the face and the body of others, or the individuality, right? That's where the energy is moving to. You know, versus other things where they might be more interested in landscapes or, I don't know, multiple portraits. He's very much all about, you know, one person, their face, their body, and even their face is obscured. And so that's Chiron and Uranus right on the ascendant, right? And then Saturn for the stiffness, but Chiron and Uranus for the surrealism, Venus for the beauty, right? For the aesthetics, for the artistry, Sag and Libra. So then Venus and Sag are in mutual reception, not by degree, but by sign. And then also Mars and Sun, Sun, and mutual reception there. Yeah, so that's interesting, right? And you can get the surrealism, the weirdness, the uniqueness, the urgency to be different, to stand out from this Chiron, Uranus, and then the Saturn is the realism, Saturn, Venus, right? It's opposite Pluto and Neptune in the 7th, so that's adding to it, definitely, especially with the, well, more so with the Neptune, but the Pluto is just, it's going to make it a bit more, especially in Gemini's for the skills of the hands, a deep psychological influence. And we'd have to really pick it apart to I mean, obviously, I don't know, I'm not, you know, we'd have to go a bit deeper to really get, like, find out exactly where this Pluto influence was, but there is a destructive element coming from Pluto, you know, just willingness to break the rules. That could be Uranus as well, but to defy and go against things, and because Pluto definitely has that destructive quality to it. Moon is in conjunct Mars. Moon's in Pisces in the 3rd, so that again for creative drawing. But Moon is also square. Let's see, square Uranus here, really a little wide, but still Uranus and Saturn in between. So that's difficult, right? And then in conjunct Mars, so you definitely probably had some mental illness, especially in the 3rd house in Pisces. Definitely mental health problems, issues. Very agitated. He'd get agitated easily with this Mars, and then also the square to Uranus and Saturn, all malefic. So, any case, don't want to spend too long on that, but fascinating. And who else has it in Sagittarius? Alfred Hitchcock, Al Capone, Heinrich Himmler, Nazi, one of the Nazi leaders, Humphrey Bogart, Jorge Luis Borges, who is a famous writer, and C.S. Lewis, another famous writer, both fiction. So definitely interesting. You can see a lot of that. You know, Alfred Hitchcock with a movie making, Two Criminals, Bogart actor. All right, let's move to Capricorn. Capricorn, we got a manly man, mystic. Manly Palmer Hall was a great occult writer. He was a philosopher, occultist, and even an astrologer. Okay. And so Saturn is his ascendant lord. It's also conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter's in Capricorn, but Chiron is nearby. And so he was a teacher, philosopher, and not, you know, sometimes people get a little scary when you hear occultist, like he was into like the secret societies, the masonry and all that. There are a lot of, you know, good people, like spiritually evolved people who took that route of occultism. Rudolf Steiner is another one, and they were against the evil side of things. But you get the evil side of things even in religion. Don't think for 1 second. I mean, the Vatican is basically satanic occultism, you know. It's co-opted deeply. But in any case, there's always different sides to these things. So I mean, people get freaked out whenever they hear Freemasonry. Oh my God, it's all evil. Well, guess what? So is most of Christianity and a lot of other religions too. I mean, not most. I mean, a lot of it, right? Christianity. I mean, even it's even in all the other religions. I mean, Christianity is so big, so in the West anyway. But anyway, he has his exalted Venus, Mercury, and Sun in Pisces, second house. So speaking, he taught a lot of red lines. So he was very intense too. He's got his Mars in the 7th, which is pretty aggressive, and it's square the nodes. North node in the 10th whole sign house, but 9th quadrant, philosophy, but also career oriented. And then actually this is the same as me. I have my Mars, but my Mars is my ascendant lord, but it's square the nodes as well. North node in Scorpio. So that's activating this Mars in the 7th and Leo. So he's very busy, very aggressive, you know, taking on teaching, and Saturn's in Capricorn, so it's domicile. But Chiron's the wounded. He's a healer and a teacher. So Chiron is Saturn is bonifying this Chiron and this Jupiter, and helping him be this kind of higher expression of Chiron, which is this teacher, philosopher, astrologer, right? Also Uranus is in the 10th house. Uranus is the significator of astrology. Uranus is opposite Pluto and Gemini, and Pluto is also conjunct Neptune. So very much occultic, mystical, you know, influence for, you know, writing, Gemini, writing at home, and then, you know, teaching all about the higher echelon of spirituality and mysticism and occultism. Mercury's ruling the 8th. Mercury's debilitated and in detriment, but it's conjunct Venus in Pisces, so that bonifies it a lot, and so it's very mystical here. In any case, you can see Chiron being more of the philosopher, teacher type person in Manly Palmer Hall. And who else has it in Capricorn? Walt Disney, Marlene Dietrich, Clark Gable, Alberto Giacometti. And Giacometti is an artist. He's a painter and sculptor. Margaret Mead, and she was a cultural anthropologist who pushed sexuality, openness in the 60s. And Carl Rogers is a psychologist. And there's nobody in Aquarius worth noting. So let's move on to Pisces. And there's tons of people in Pisces because that was the most recent conjunction in the 60s. And we're going to go to huge writer, J.K. Rowling. And this is, I think, a good example of Saturn conjunct Chiron in Pisces. We're not getting any other influence here with J.K. Rowling. It's just Saturn and Chiron in Pisces in the second house. So fantastic for imagination, for creativity, for having a voice, an expression that is extremely Saturnian and Chironic. And Saturn really makes things long, right? So she can write these long books, many of them, again and again. Of course, this is the second house, not the third, but second and third house are tied together. She does have her North Node in Jupiter and Gemini in the fourth, so she likes being at home writing. Third lord's Venus. Venus is in Virgo, conjunct a Mercury exalted and domicile in 0 degrees Virgo. So we got Mercury, Venus, Uranus, Pluto, Moon, all in Virgo in the 7th, moving into the 8th. So the 8th house influence for, and Mercury is ruling the 8th as well, right? So Mercury, so the 8th house is for that deep, dark, all the magical monsters and goblins and all the weird stuff like that. Mars is in the 8th quadrant as well, 9th whole sign house. But so we're getting that 8th, 9th, magic, mysticism. Neptune also in Scorpio, trine this Saturn Chiron. So you can tell her mind is going really into writing about like all the, deep, dark, heebie-jeebie, like scary, woo-woo, Pluto, Uranus, magic, all that stuff that she writes about with Harry Potter. And Moon's bringing in the kitty influence into Virgo. Virgo is very puritanical, likes to keep things kosher, so it's not going to be like sexual, which is such a strong Virgo influence, and pulling in that kitty influence here. Innocence and whatnot. Sun in Leo, 6th house, so just getting down to business, daily grind. But also a lot of confidence and creativity comes from Sun in Leo, and Pisces, ascendant Lord Saturn, and Pisces is very creative. Right? Saturn is also ruling the 12th house, creativity. Chiron is square Jupiter, but Jupiter's in Gemini. So that's, squares to Jupiter are generally not so bad because Jupiter is a great benefic. So it's interesting. Definitely expanding this Chironic vibe. Pull this up here. Mercury, extremely slow, almost stationary, right? Almost stationary. And then Neptune, almost stationary, right? Let's show you Neptune, 2 days from station. So this is Neptune, imagination, Scorpio, really, really potent, trining the Saturn and Chiron. So you can see, there's so much influence going into like this, writing these long novels that are all like deep, dark, mysterious, but kid-friendly, magic and all that. Yeah. It's no mystery here. What she's here to do. Yeah. So that's J.K. Rowling. And who else has it in Pisces? Kurt Cobain, Robert Downey Jr. And so just a quick note, Robert Downey Jr. obviously playing the role of Iron Man. That's a Chironic figure. Sophie Marceau, Bjork is a Chironic figure herself. Halle Berry, Gordon Ramsay feels pretty Chironic himself. Mike Tyson also. Salma Hayek also. Right? Some you see it more strongly, some it's more subtle, right? But I think we're getting the picture. In any case, that is the quick Chiron and Saturn conjunction, and we can look forward to another generation in Taurus. Maybe we'll have some amazing writers or artists or whatnot, designers, after that happens, but that's not for a ways away. We can actually just look at that real quick. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but make it simple. Get rid of everything. Yeah, we'll leave that in. Just and then we'll go years, and we'll go now. Transit. Just try and find the. There we are. That didn't take too long. Okay. 2029. I was off. I thought 2030, but all right. 2029. It'll be about. Yeah. All right. So you can look forward to that. Next conjunction will be in 2029. Not too far away, but don't hold your breath. So that'll be a good time for artistic, creative sort of expression. Long, very mature novels and whatnot. Very long musical, Saturn really makes things like well developed, mature, and long. In any case, that's it for now. That's Saturn and Chiron. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit the like button if you can, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this. Subscribe if you haven't already. Come to my class this coming Sunday, the 29th. It'll be all about retrogrades. I'm going to give a presentation. And just email me to get on the list and book a reading with me. My website is macroastrology.com. My email is macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And I will see you again soon. All right. Thank you. Bye.